The year was 1531. A Spanish conquistador called Juan Martinez lay on his deathbed. With the final breath in his body, he confessed a secret. The story of a long-lost place deep in South America. It was an isolated city he stumbled across when lost in the jungle, a place safe from the ravages of the European conquerors. The people there were kind and peaceful, and astonishingly wealthy, for they lived in a great city of gold, on the edge of a giant lake whose shores were laced with gold dust. The Spanish called it El Dorado, and it has become legend. But does recent evidence suggest it may have been real? El Dorado has captured the imagination of the world ever since the first rumors of its existence emerged in the early 16th century. At least 20 expeditions have gone in search of it. So certain were explorers that it was real, numerous early maps of South America include the lost city. Juan Martinez, the catalyst for the craze, claimed he found the city after becoming separated from an expedition led by Diego de Ordaz. De Ordaz was already looking for El Dorado along the Orinoco River, but never found it. Martinez, however, got lost floating downriver on a canoe. Carried by the current, he was eventually found by a native tribe who blindfolded him and took him to their emperor, Inga. They were kind to him. Emperor Inga treated him like a royal guest, feeding him and housing him in his great palace, where everything was made of gold. The native Indian empires were incredibly rich in gold. The Spanish seized or mined most of it during their conquest. For instance, Francisco Pizarro ransomed the Incan ruler Atahualpa for 24 tons of gold and silver. Estimates suggest up to 180 tons of gold and 16,000 tons of silver were brought from the New World to the Old. The precise amount is unknown, because most of it was melted down and traded around the world. Martinez did not call the city he discovered El Dorado. He called it Manoa, and said the journey to it from the Orinoco lasted 14 or 15 days. He claimed he lived there for 7 months. Based on Martinez's description, many expeditions went looking for El Dorado. Spanish, German, Dutch, and English explorers concentrated on Venezuela and the Colombian plateaus. The main clue to its location was the name, Manoa, which means big lake. This correlated with separate stories of a gigantic body of water called Lake Parime, somewhere in the mountains south of the Orinoco. Explorers were convinced that Manoa and Parime were the same place, and the city of El Dorado was on the shore. Yet every expedition ended in failure. German adventurers Nikolaus Federmann, Georg von Speer, and Philipp von Hutten spent 15 years leading hundreds of men to their deaths in search of El Dorado. English explorer Sir Walter Raleigh went looking for it twice. The second time was such a disaster, his son was killed, his best friend committed suicide, and Raleigh himself was beheaded on the order of King James I. The younger brother of Francisco Pizarro led thousands of men into the jungles to look for the Gilded Empire. He was forced to turn back after many of them died from disease, starvation, and attacks from the natives. However, his companion, Francisco de Orellana, did discover the Amazon River during the expedition. The one recurring feature of all the expeditions, despite their tragic ends, was that they found gold almost everywhere among the tribes they encountered and along the riverbanks they navigated, presumably washed down from Lake Parime. On the other hand, around the year 1800, scientist Alexander von Humboldt carried out an extensive survey of the river basins in the region and found no trace of either Lake Parime or El Dorado. He noticed that a confluence of rivers flooded seasonally, and he concluded that tales of a giant lake were inspired by this. By the end of the 19th century, El Dorado was considered a mere myth, a metaphor for the folly of greed. Instead, the story of El Dorado seems to have originated from a much more specific place. The earliest references to it seem to be Spanish accounts of El Hombre Dorado, the Gilded Man. Native Indians had told the Spanish about a ritual carried out by a tribe at Lake Guatavita near Bogota. As Juan Rodriguez Fraile recorded in 1638, whenever the tribe appointed a new ruler, they made a raft of rushes and stripped the heir to his skin and anointed him with a sticky earth on which they placed gold dust so that he was completely covered with this metal. They placed him on the raft, and at his feet they placed a great heap of gold and emeralds for him to offer to his god. The gilded Indian then threw out all the pile of gold into the middle of the lake. With this ceremony, the new ruler was received and was recognized as Lord and King. This, according to historians, is the real El Dorado, an Indian ritual now vanished, another victim of the conquistadors. However, in 1977, Brazilian geologists found a horizontal line running along hillsides at a uniform level roughly 120 meters above sea level in North Brazil, south of the Orinoco. The line is a mark of the water level of an ancient lake about 80,000 kilometers square. In other words, a massive body of water similar to Lake Parime. Archaeology proves that people lived around it for thousands of years. Intriguingly, the lake existed until quite recently. In 1690, an earthquake created a crack in the bedrock and the lake drained away. Any gold in the lake would have washed away with the water. This may be the lake European explorers were searching for. And if Lake Parime existed, might the city of Manoa have existed too? For 2 centuries now, El Dorado has been considered a myth. It seems likely the name arose to describe a rare ritual, then was transferred to a legendary city. There is no proof that Juan Martinez's story is true. However, recent scientific discoveries support his tale of a big lake high in the mountains, one that could have been rich with gold and minerals. It may be that El Dorado doesn't exist as a city made of gold, but an isolated paradise boasting enormous wealth could well have been real, and inspired the stories that led so many explorers to disappointment and death.